So the CONVIO is a really simple head. There's really not a lot to it. For those of you guys that do run one, you have your toolless belt tension here. You got one on each side. And then you also have one under the center feed section. You just open it up, maybe. And then you might just have to kind of jam it back and forth to get the belts loose if you do get dirt, debris built up along the edge. And then you just adjust this until your indicator is in your green in here. So pretty simple. Again, you don't need any tools, not a lot to it. Then the other adjustment you do have under here is for your snout. You just adjust it with this nut here, and that's just your spring pressure. With it on the ground, probably won't be able to tell, but. So this one, we'd probably want a little more spring pressure, so the spring is lifting up on it a little more. If it's pushing on the ground, you might start a little snowball effect, and then that'll lead to the snowball coming under the head and wanting to pick this end of the head up. So again, it's not real difficult to adjust that, but if you are having issues with that wanting to drag crop along, just tighten that spring down and it'll lift that snout up just slightly. Another thing to do if you guys are having issues in lodged crop and you really need to rake that crop up, instead of adjusting your cylinders, because you'd have to adjust 4 of them, you can always unpin the reel and just move it a hole forward. That'll bring the reel farther forward and help kind of grab some of that crop and not have to worry about cutting your fingers off. Nobody wants to do that. They're expensive and there's a lot to change. So just a feature. It is dual knife drive and shaft driven instead of belt driven, so you can hit those soybeans head on. You don't have to worry about going at an angle to make sure you don't stall your cutter bar. So related to the cutter bar, with this one being on the ground, basically you guys just want to keep a gap of about a credit card or a hotel key between your knife and your hold down. If they are too tight, you might start seeing discoloration or it might be getting too hot. If it's too loose, it might not cut as well either. If you kind of think of like a pair of scissors, if the scissors are loose, it's not really going to cut very well. So if you do need to tighten them down or loosen them up, you just take shims from a different one that's good to go. And also, if you guys are in really short crop and you're having trouble getting that crop up onto the belts, you can always remove your rock guards. You don't take the bolts out, just loosen the bolts and you just pop all the rock guards off. You're still going to catch rocks. You don't have to worry about dragging a bunch of rocks onto the belts. But that is a little helpful because you'll basically get rid of just this ledge here. That'll help get some of that shorter crop up onto the belts. And also with the belts, just because I ran into this year in wheat, guys, make sure that you do have your center belt running faster than your side belts, just so you get that good feeding. You want basically the 2 streams of crop to just barely meet in the middle. You don't want them hitting each other, and you don't want them going all the way to the outsides, otherwise they'll start underfeeding. So you don't want that either. You want a nice, even crop mat all the way across. Your fingers are adjustable. You do have to loosen some bolts here on the side, and then you can rotate these fingers to wherever you want them. Typically, we try to have them parallel to the cutter bar starting out. Again, that's kind of preference and what kind of conditions you're running in. You do have your rock catcher in the front here to catch rocks. So that's kind of a nice feature there. I know a lot of guys, if they're running really dusty conditions, they'll run just these lights and shut the combine lights off. You won't get that haze, and it makes it really nice to see far out there. If you guys are doing wheat, you need to have the sensing bands underneath installed. Otherwise, you cannot run in rigid mode. It'll go into rigid when you pick the head up, but as soon as you go to your height resume, it's going to go automatically to flex, which is fine if you guys are cutting on the ground in wheat and you're baling your straw. We do have guys that will run without the sensing bands and put it in auto flex, and it does a great job. But if you do want to cut off the ground at all, you have to have the sensing bands installed. And then also, when you are tilting the head back, try not to go back farther than -2. You might start dragging on your ends due to some weldments on the backside. And you shouldn't really need to go farther back than that anyways. So we do have the indicator here to basically tell you where your flex is at. In manual flex, you want to set your first cut height to 0, and then your second one to 1. This one here. When you're in auto flex, it sets it for you. You don't have to worry about it. So that's what that indicator for. I've had a lot of questions on that, what exactly that's supposed to do. So just remember to always set your first cut height at 0 and your second one at 1. And that should do pretty much everything you want it to do. And then you can always rock the feeder house forward or back to -2 or to +2, depending on if you need to scalp the ground or get any closer. And these heads do have their own controller, so that is something that every once in a while there might be a software update. You can go in and update that controller, but that'll keep track of your header hours, and they'll make it too so you don't have to keep recalibrating your head every time you hook it up. It automatically saves it in there, so that's a really nice feature as well.